Now, the important issue here is that ketones, if you can get them high enough, they will absolutely kill the tumor cells. Dom D'Agostino and I showed this, and so did several others. Now, here's the plan. You get your blood sugar down, you get your ketones up, and you get into this so-called zone of metabolic management, and we're trying to achieve that. Now, this is a very interesting picture of a dog with a big tumor on his face. Now, some woman from Georgia read our papers, looked at our videos and YouTubes, and she had this big dog, and it had this big mast cell tumor on his face. Here's his nose, and here's the tumor. And she said, I did what you said. I fed my dog. She went to the butcher, got organic chicken with the bone still in the meat. And she got a little medium-chain triglyceride oil, a little raw egg. And she calculated the size of her dog, how many calories the dog should eat, what should I do to restrict the 40% calories. And she gave the dog that. And within a very short period of time, you can see the dates here, this tumor shrunk. The vet said that you're going to have surgery, radiation, and chemo, and it's going to be expensive, and the dog may live only 6 months. So she did this on her own, without any training. And look, here's April 2014, and this, she sent me the picture last month, January 2015. How's the dog doing? Doing fine. I mean, the dog, he should have been dead, right? So anyway, can a ketogenic diet be effective in patients? What about people? Okay, Linda Nebling, now at the NIH, she took 2 little girls, hopeless cases. They were really in bad shape. You got to read the article. You'd be shocked at what they did to these little kids. Poison, the toxic drugs the kids gave them. It's just sad. It makes you cry when you read it. They were irradiated. They were surgically mutilated. They were all kinds of things. And then she grabbed them, put them on this ketogenic diet. And their quality of life came back. They started to interact with their friends. They went back to school. Now, they didn't survive, or at least we don't. One was lost to follow-up. One lived much longer than was expected. But their quality of life increased dramatically when they were put on the ketogenic diet. And she lowered the blood sugar, and she elevated the ketones, just as we did for the dog and these mice. And the kids got the same kind of an effect. Everybody, oh, it's anecdotal, you got to run a clinical trial and stuff. But I'm telling you, we've seen this across the species. So anyway, we designed a protocol. Now, we first had to characterize, yes, she has GBM, pathological report. Now, here's the big tumor in the brain. It's a multicentric glioblastoma. These are the worst of the worst kind. I mean, these tumors are really nasty. And, we got this. And then as soon as she came out of surgery, she went on a ketogenic diet, calorie-restricted, therapeutic fast, water only, all this kind of stuff. We were able to bring her blood sugars down, her ketones up a little bit, and then we had an MRI several months after all this. Now, she was getting radiation, and she was getting chemo. So not temozolomide. She was off the steroids. She was getting radiation. But we have here a tumor several months later, and we call this radiological resolution. You don't see any tumor in her brain anymore. And everybody was like shocked. Not that it doesn't happen. It happens very, very rarely. And maybe she's one of those rare cases. But we had several more like this over periods of months, and it looked like everything was good. So she was swimming in the Mediterranean. She felt good. Her quality of life was excellent. She gets off the diet, and then about 2 or 3 months later, the tumor comes back, and rather than going back on the metabolic therapy, she decides to go on Avastin, which is a big blockbuster drug in the pharmaceutical companies. I said, don't use that. I've looked into Avastin. It's the worst of the worst drug. Never use it. The FDA pulled it off the market for breast cancer, but they haven't pulled it off for brain. The tumor came back and she died. So we learned a lot from this. We've come up with this concept of the press pulse paradigm, which I think, and Dom and a bunch of us think, is going to be a more rational way to deal with this cancer. Now, will it work? I think so, but it needs to be proven. Now, what we're going to do is we have these cells in our body that are tumor cells, and they are filled with mutations. No denying that. We have done, listen, there's plenty of, when we take our body and we fast, and we go through these different scenarios, our cells earn the right to live in this body because we evolved over millions of years from all these other organisms. We are tough. Our normal cells can make these metabolic transitions because our genomes were evolved to do that. These tumor cells are loaded with mutations. When you do that, you have all these mutations. You saw how they block development. Well, they're going to block the transition from going from one state to another. And we think this is the way we're going to be able to manage this. We use a ketogenic diet to form a total press on the body, a mild metabolic stress that puts these tumor cells, makes them vulnerable. Then we come in with non-toxic drugs and we hit them. We hit them this way, we hit them that way, we hit them this way, as long as they're under the press. And we think we can do this non-toxically to keep people alive. Because we've shown it in the mice. When we combine certain drugs with the diet, we get synergy. The diet is the press, the pulse is the drug, non-toxic drug. Dom D'Agostino and his group, we published this showing systemic metastatic cancer. The blue is all these tumor cells that are lit up, and they're blue all over the mouse because they're spreading just like human metastatic cancer. Hyperbaric oxygen does a little bit. The diet does, of course, has some significant effect. But when you combine the two together, you get synergy. Non-toxic synergy. We just don't know all the right ways to do this yet, or the dosage or the best way and what state you have to be in, but we think we can perfect all that. This is another interesting. 25% of all cancer deaths come from metastasis from some organ to the brain. Okay? So we have the headlight. So we have this model. You put the cells in the flank, and you can see the tumor cells go to the mouse's brain. And the mice, this is just like human. We put them on these calorie-restricted ketogenic diets, and we significantly reduce the spread of the tumor from an organ to the brain. So we're able to show you how to do this. Now, the problem is, I'll just briefly mention this, people don't know. If you have cancer, you don't know when you're in this metabolic zone. How are you going to do it? If you run a clinical trial, how do we know this? So my students and I developed the glucose ketone index. It's ridiculously simple. You just divide glucose by the millimolar and ketone millimolar, you come up with a number. And what we found is the closer that number is to 1 or below, 1.0, you're in this metabolic zone that's putting a lot of pressure on these tumor cells. Okay? This gives the patient an opportunity to look at where he stands today. It's like somebody who has diabetes. They look at look at my blood sugar's a little high, better take some insulin or better take some metformin or something like this. Patients now and their caregivers can now administer these kinds of, they can use this as a tool to assess their therapeutic efficacy. Now what I did is I edited a big series of publications on ketones, not only for brain cancer. We're now realizing that these ketones have tremendous power to manage a number of chronic diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury. They reduce inflammation. They provide an alternative fuel to the brain and suppress a lot of the damaging events that occur through aging or chronic trauma or acute trauma. And if you're interested, we're putting this together now. The academicians are starting to take notice of what's going on. A lot of this is in my book on cancer as a metabolic disease. I also want to bring your attention to the book that Travis wrote. Travis couldn't believe what I was saying in my book. He said, I can't believe this. So he said, I have to go out and talk to those geneticists and those scientists at these big universities and find out what do they think about all this. And he came away with he said, these guys are lost. These guys who are doing these genomic studies. They can say everything can be anything and its opposite. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this stuff. Yet we're plowing ahead with billions of dollars. So he wrote a book for the layperson, more or less like a journalist, going around getting personal. He wants to talk to the scientists that did the work or how they feel about it. It comes out very interesting. So in conclusion, preclinical and case report studies indicate that the restricted ketogenic diet can be an effective non-toxic metabolic for children and adults, and that this therapeutic can be enhanced if we combine it with the press-pulse paradigm. These are non-toxic approaches. I can't tell you whether it's going to be the solution to the cancer problem, but I can tell you I think it works, and it's not going to hurt you. And it has the potential mechanistically to be very effective. Now, a lot of my collaborators at different universities, a lot of physicians and basic researchers, Dom is here, Joe Maroon at Pittsburgh, team surgeon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, we have a number of people that are gathering together that are basically outraged about this cancer situation, and they want to do something about it. And I want to thank you for your attention.